Mysterious ambient music plays softly. What if the world you perceive is fundamentally different from the world I perceive? What if the color red you see is entirely different from my experience of red? What if the touch of silk against your skin creates an orchestra of sound that only you can hear? These aren't merely philosophical thought experiments, but the lived reality for people with unusual sensory processing disorders. Welcome to our exploration of the enigmatic world of unusual sensory processing disorders, where reality itself becomes fluid, where boundaries between senses dissolve, and where the very fabric of perception is rewoven into extraordinary patterns. Today, we'll venture into the mysterious territories where sensory experiences transcend conventional boundaries, revealing the perplexing and often baffling ways the human brain can interpret the world around us. Intro End. Our journey begins with understanding sensory processing itself, that intricate, largely invisible process through which your brain interprets the constant stream of information from your environment. Beyond the five traditional senses, sight, sound, smell, taste, and touch, we possess other, more enigmatic senses. Proprioception, the mysterious awareness of your body's position in space. Vestibular sense, which governs balance and spatial orientation. And interoception, that ghostly perception of your internal bodily states. When these systems function in harmony, the world appears seamless and coherent. But when unusual variations emerge in sensory processing, reality itself can transform in ways that defy ordinary explanation. These aren't simply processing errors. They're alternative ways of experiencing existence, windows into the bewildering complexity of human consciousness. Perhaps the most captivating of sensory phenomena is synesthesia, a perplexing neurological variation where stimulation of one sensory pathway automatically triggers experiences in another. Imagine tasting shapes, hearing colors, or seeing sounds. For grapheme color synesthetes, the number 7 might shimmer persistently blue, while Tuesday radiates an unmistakable shade of purple. For those with chromesthesia, a C minor chord might manifest as cascading green spirals, while the sound of a violin creates ribbons of golden light dancing before their eyes. The composer France Liszt once baffled orchestra members by requesting they play the music a little bluer or make it not so rose. Vladimir Nabokov described the letter A as weathered wood in a rain myth. These aren't metaphors, but genuine perceptual experiences, blurred boundaries between sensory domains that most of us experience as entirely separate realms. What makes synesthesia particularly enchanting is that these associations remain remarkably consistent throughout a synesthete's lifetime. The number 5 that appears red at age 7 will still appear red at age 70. An extraordinary consistency that challenges our understanding of how sensory systems develop and interact. Now imagine watching someone receive a caress on their cheek and physically feeling that same touch on your own face. This is the bewildering reality for those with mirror touch synesthesia, where the boundary between self and other becomes mysteriously permeable. When a person with mirror touch synesthesia observes someone being touched, they experience the sensation on their own body in the corresponding location. Witness someone's hand being stroked, and you feel phantom fingers trailing across your own hand. This extraordinary phenomenon appears linked to hyperactive mirror neuron systems, those enigmatic neural networks that activate both when we perform an action and when we observe someone else performing that same action. For mirror touch synesthetes, this system extends beyond action into the realm of physical sensation. The implications are profound and often challenging. Imagine walking through a crowded street, physically experiencing every handshake, every embrace, every collision between strangers. The world becomes an overwhelming tapestry of borrowed sensations, blurring the boundaries of where your body ends and others begin. Consider the mysterious condition known as misophonia, literally hatred of sound, where specific sounds trigger overwhelming emotional responses. Unlike general noise sensitivity, misophonia involves specific triggers, often human-generated sounds like chewing, breathing, or repetitive tapping. What makes misophonia particularly perplexing is the intensity of the reaction. The sound of someone quietly eating chips can trigger not mere annoyance, but overwhelming fight-or-flight responses, racing heart, sweating, rage, panic. These reactions appear automatic and uncontrollable, arising from deeper brain structures involved in emotion and threat detection. One misophonia sufferer described it as feeling like your brain is being jabbed with a hot poker while simultaneously wanting to flee and fight. Another explained that the sound of pen clicking doesn't just bother me, it feels like it's attacking me. This condition remains shrouded in mystery, hovering at the intersection of auditory processing, emotional regulation, and the brain's salience network. The suffering is very real, often forcing people to restructure their lives to avoid trigger sounds, straining relationships, and limiting social participation. In stark contrast to misophonia stands the enigmatic phenomenon of ASMR, autonomous sensory meridian response, where certain auditory and visual triggers create pleasurable tingling sensations that cascade from the scalp down the spine. Soft whispering, gentle tapping, the delicate sound of pages turning. For those receptive to ASMR, these subtle stimuli evoke a euphoric response that many describe as brain tingles. This sensation often accompanies profound relaxation and even a meditative state. What makes ASMR particularly fascinating is its recent cultural emergence. Though likely experienced throughout human history, only in the digital age has it been named and cultivated, with millions now seeking ASMR triggers through online videos. The neurological basis remains elusive, though preliminary research suggests it may involve the brain's reward pathways and perhaps even the release of endorphins, oxytocin, and serotonin, turning simple sensory experiences into waves of pleasure and comfort. Now we venture into the disorienting realm of Alice in Wonderland syndrome, a neurological condition where perception of size, space, and time becomes dramatically distorted. Imagine watching your hand grow impossibly large before your eyes, or seeing the person across from you shrink to miniature size. Doorways might suddenly appear miles away, or the ground might seem to tilt and shift beneath your feet. Time itself can stretch or compress, with seconds feeling like hours or hours passing in what seems like moments. The condition takes its name from Lewis Carroll's famous tale, where Alice experiences dramatic changes in her size and perspective. Intriguingly, Carroll himself suffered from migraines, which are commonly associated with this syndrome. These distortions aren't hallucinations. Patients recognize them as perceptual anomalies rather than reality. They arise from temporary changes in brain regions responsible for processing visual information and spatial awareness, often triggered by migraines, seizures, infections, or psychological stress. What makes this condition particularly baffling is how it reveals the constructed nature of our reality. How size, distance, and time aren't objective constants, but interpretations created by our brains. Consider now the mysterious realm of proprioception, our ghostly, sixth sense that tells us where our body parts are in space without looking at them. When proprioceptive processing goes awry, the results can be profoundly disorienting. Individuals with proprioceptive processing disorders may struggle with basic movements, repeatedly bumping into objects, unable to judge distances accurately, or lacking awareness of their limbs' positions. Some describe the sensation as feeling disconnected from parts of their body, or as though they're constantly floating. This enigmatic sense relies on specialized receptors in muscles and joints that continuously send information to the brain about body position. When this system functions improperly, the very foundation of how we navigate physical space becomes uncertain. What makes proprioceptive disorders particularly challenging is their invisibility. Unlike blindness or deafness, these conditions affect an internal sense that most people never consciously recognize they possess until it malfunctions. Perhaps one of the most baffling sensory phenomena is that of phantom sensations, particularly phantom limb experiences, where amputees continue to vividly feel a limb that no longer exists. These aren't mere memories or imaginings, but genuine sensory experiences. People report itches they cannot scratch, pain in fingers that were amputated decades ago, or the distinct feeling of a phantom hand clenching until the nails dig painfully into a palm that isn't there. This phenomenon reveals something profound about how our brains map our bodies. The brain maintains neural representations of our physical form, a body map, that can persist even when the physical body changes. When sensory input from a limb suddenly ceases after amputation, the brain's map doesn't simply erase that region. Instead, it rewires, with adjacent brain areas often invading the territory formerly dedicated to the lost limb. Most fascinating are the therapeutic implications. Using mirror boxes that create visual illusions of the missing limb, patients can sometimes move their phantom limb out of painful positions, demonstrating how visual feedback can override even these ghostly sensations. The sensory world of autism spectrum disorders offers another window into alternative perceptual realities. For many autistic individuals, sensory information arrives with unusual intensity, diminished filtering, or altered processing. A gentle touch might feel like sandpaper scraping across skin. Fluorescent lights might not just be annoying, but appear to flicker violently, pulsing with unbearable intensity. Background conversations in a restaurant might all arrive at equal volume, making it impossible to focus on any single voice. What neurotypical individuals filter out automatically can remain painfully present for those with autism. As one autistic writer expressed, imagine experiencing every single sensory input at maximum volume, with no ability to turn down the dial. Conversely, some autistic individuals experience hyposensitivity in certain domains, seeking intense sensory input through spinning, pressure, or visual stimulation. This isn't simply sensory-seeking behavior, but a genuine neurological need. The brain literally requiring more intense input to register sensations appropriately. These differences aren't deficits, but alternative ways of processing reality, revealing the neurological diversity that shapes human experience. The chemical senses, taste and smell, harbor their own mysterious disorders. Consider phantasmia, where people smell odors that don't exist, or parosmia, where real odors are distorted into often unpleasant perceptions. Imagine awakening one day to find coffee smells like gasoline, your favorite foods taste like rotten garbage, or you constantly detect a burning smell that no one else can perceive. These aren't mere annoyances, but profound disruptions to how individuals navigate and enjoy the world. The olfactory system's unique architecture, with direct neural connections to areas governing memory and emotion, means these disorders can have devastating psychological impacts. One patient described it as living in a world where everything beautiful has been replaced by something repulsive. Recent research, accelerated by post-COVID smell and taste disorders, is revealing the neuroplasticity of these chemical senses and their remarkable ability to rewire, offering hope for those trapped in distorted sensory worlds. The frontiers of research into sensory processing disorders are expanding rapidly. Advanced neuroimaging techniques now allow scientists to observe the living brain as it processes sensory information, revealing the neural underpinnings of these mysterious conditions. Novel treatments are emerging at the intersection of neuroscience and technology. Sensory integration therapy helps retrain the brain's processing of sensory information. Biofeedback allows individuals to gain conscious awareness of usually unconscious sensory processing. Virtual reality environments offer controlled settings to practice coping with sensory challenges. Most intriguingly, understanding the neurological basis of these conditions is shifting our approach from treating disorders to recognizing neurological diversity, acknowledging that different brains process sensory information differently, without necessarily labeling any particular pattern as wrong. As one researcher noted, these conditions reveal the spectacular diversity of human perception. They aren't just pathologies to be cured, but windows into the remarkable flexibility of the human brain. As we conclude our journey through these unusual sensory processing phenomena, we're left with profound questions about the nature of reality itself. If two humans can experience the same external stimulus in radically different ways, what does this tell us about the objectivity of our perceptions? Perhaps what we call reality is merely a consensus, an agreed-upon interpretation of sensory data that works well enough for most people, most of the time. Those with unusual sensory processing reveal the constructed nature of our perceptual world. These conditions challenge our fundamental understanding of consciousness and highlight the mysterious gap between physical stimuli and subjective experience, what philosophers call the explanatory gap. How does neural firing become the taste of chocolate, the color blue, or the sound of a violin? As we continue to study these enigmatic phenomena, we're not just learning about unusual conditions. We're peering into the very mechanisms that create our subjective experience of being human. And perhaps most importantly, we're learning to appreciate the extraordinary diversity of human perception, recognizing that each of us experiences a slightly different version of reality. The next time you encounter someone whose reactions to sensory stimuli seem unusual or extreme, remember, they may literally be experiencing a different world than you are, one just as real, just as valid, and just as worthy of understanding. Outro, start. Mysterious ambient music returns. Thank you for joining this exploration of unusual sensory processing disorders. Until next time, remember that the boundaries of human perception extend far beyond what any single one of us experiences, into realms both enigmatic and profound. Outro end.